Hi, and welcome to our podcast, Good Deeds Real Estate with a Mission. I'm Diane Davidson from the Fine Homes Group at Keller Williams, and I'm here with Doug Irvine, the man you never want to let into your home, at least if you live in Bedford. He's the tax assessor. Welcome, Doug.
Well, thank you, I think.
So we love having you here because you are an amazing statistician. You have a very analytical mind, all sorts of stuff that bores me. But you did a great presentation with our group, with Bill, actually, about a year. Has it been a year?
It's November, so
Oh God! See, I knew
7
you'd
months. No, we're in April, so I'm an assessor. I should know how to count.
Yeah, six.
Five.
Five. Oh, there we go. Oh boy,
Something like that.
Lock the doors. Anyway, so would love to talk to you about. We're going to do another segment as well, but the serious stuff first.
Yeah.
If you could just talk about sort of the process and even how you got into it, but the job, but just kind of the process that you go through so that the property owners can understand.
The mysteries of what we
exactly.
do.
Thank you. Yes. Okay.
I know, and it is. And people have, there is validity to this mysteriousness, this idea that we're somehow able to simultaneously value 8,300 parcels in the lovely town of Bedford, but yet we manage. To answer the other question really quickly, I got into this whole thing very randomly, as most assessors do. We don't go to school to become assessors. Maybe a couple do. So no, it was completely by accident, just moving across the country. My wife's family's from this area, so it was such a random thing. And I thought, I'll measure houses for a couple weeks, give it a shot.
And when was that?
That was in 2003, so
more than a couple of weeks.
Almost 2 decades.
Say 19 years.
I'm still doing it, still causing trouble.
Yeah.
So very random. Anyway, what's not random would be how we value property. But I think one of the challenges is that it seems so kind of behind the curtain to people. And part of that is not intentional at all. It's just it's a complex process. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of statistics involved. It is appraisal. And like a fee appraiser who comes to your house and compares your house to, a handful of other comparable sales or listings, where the goal is the same, to value a property as of a certain date and come up with an opinion that is the most likely scenario based on past analysis, meaning the sale of similar property. It's the devil's in the details, and so we part ways between fee appraisers and assessors in that we do this simultaneous mass appraisal on a huge level. Mm-hmm. So your approach is different and the results can vary too. So for instance, if I want to, let's say you lived in Bedford and you had a nice house. Well, you actually did.
We did. Might have sold too soon, but okay.
Okay.
Cobbler's
I know.
children.
If we could rewind the clock and tell you to hold out. Anyway, so if you had this nice house in Bedford, I would be looking at data for your house and many, many other houses in the town of Bedford that are similar, within a range of square footage, of age, of quality, similar location or desirability. And I could come up with 20 comps, maybe more. It depends. If you get into, if you think about some of our subdivisions in town, some tract housing subdivisions, you're talking about hundreds of properties and there might be dozens of sales. Mm-hmm. So we look at a lot of data when we're doing this. The fee appraiser isn't obligated to do that. They look at Diane's house and then say, I think within a mile radius or whatever, within a few months marketing time, I could find 3 or 4 comparables. So they're really honing in on just a small amount. I don't have that luxury. I have to look at any and all data that relates so that there's consistency across the board. And because of that, sometimes assessments start to vary a bit from a sale or from each other, depending on the details. So it's a big process, and it can be a frustrating one to try to understand. So I'm kind of on a mission to see if I can do something about that, or
Like
improve,
educate people, you mean?
educate people, or give them tools to better understand for themselves. Make it simpler to have access to information that helps them to understand how all this works, if they're so interested. Not everybody is, but you know, some people, it's like, whatever, you know, death and taxes, the two sure things in life. But yeah, I think that people are smart, and I think if they have the right tools, they can help themselves visualize better what is happening with valuations.
And it's interesting because when you bring up appraisals, an appraiser is their mission when they're hired by a lender. They're trying to validate a price that a willing buyer is going to pay, and they're in a lane, and that's it, with basically three to 6 data points, right? You are trying to establish a price and make sure that one value is correct relative to 8,299 others, right? So if this is worth this, it's like if you give a mouse a cookie or not. If this is worth this, then it has to be fair relative to that. I mean, it's a much huger responsibility. Is huger a word?
No, but we're going with it.
Much more huge responsibility, and it's a much different process, because people often get, like, well, it appraised for that, huh? Although half the time these days they're probably appraising for more than you're assessing them for.
By a landslide.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
That's a good
I
point.
bet most people are keeping their mouth shut now.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
have an appraisal. No, I don't.
Yeah, exactly. Well, these are unique times.
Yes,
in the
they
market.
are. Well, they're just, every market, people have said to me, when's it going to be a normal market? I say, what is a normal market? We just
Right.
have a market at the moment, and every moment the market is what it is, right?
That is true.
So, some questions. How much does, is there a diminishing return factor on a lot of land, an abundance of land that can't be subdivided, for instance? And how does certain elements, are there some elements that you can talk about that influence it more or less than the average homeowner would think?
You mean in terms of the
Value.
size of a lot, a
Yeah.
buildable lot, for
Yeah.
instance? Well, and I think you know something about this too, since as a realtor, you're also a primary part of valuation, correct?
Correct.
So if we think about a scenario where you and I are neighbors, and you have 3 acres and I have 1.5 acres, we have the same builder build our homes around the same time. They're mirror images of each other, let's just say. When those properties go to sell, from your experience, do you feel like your house is going to be, or your property is worth, at least land value wise, double what mine would be?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I have to say, as a realtor, it depends on the land. If we know in Bedford, towns like Bedford, which have beautiful rolling hills, 3 acres, you might have 1/4 of an acre that's usable.
That is
And you
true.
can have 1.5 acres where the whole thing is usable, right? So
That is
we
very
look
true.
at that, which you probably, I would say, less so, right?
Oh no, we do look at
You
that.
do? Okay.
Yeah, just like you do. We do that. In my head, the scenario I'm working with is
Same identical
just,
lots, except twice the size.
prairie-esque,
Okay.
pasture,
Okay.
just the most obvious example you can have, where it's just a couple of flat lots with just wall-to-wall grass or sod or whatever your choice is. Kentucky bluegrass, I don't know, horses, whatever.
So do I think the land is worth twice as much? Probably not.
Probably
Probably
not.
there's
I
some
think that's a
diminishing
good
returns.
answer.
Yeah.
I think the market bears this out, that my lot size being half the amount or half the size of yours wouldn't actually double your land value at a sale.
Got it.
The primary value to both of these properties that are mirror images of each other is the fact that, by definition, the land is buildable.
Right.
That is the biggest intrinsic value to these properties.
Right.
From there can be added value to your extra acreage. So is it $10,000 of added value? Is it 20? If these properties are, say, worth in somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million, it's possible. So what we end up doing is analyzing sales and lot sizes primary, and we track what's usable, what's unusable, and develop algorithmic curves. Here we go into the stats. I'm not even going to get into it, but land curves, so per unit, per square foot, the increase goes like this, and then it's diminishing returns because the market tells us that that's the case. We don't invent the data. We're analysts.
Right.
You know, people ask me to forecast. I have to be very careful. In fact, I won't.
We won't either.
We could always estimate. You know, sometimes people will say, "Hey, Doug, I want to build a garage for my house, and what would you assess it for?" And I say, "Well, that depends." You know, like any appraiser would say, it depends. Are you going to sink $50,000 into it, or is it going to be a carriage house that's more expensive than some homes in Bedford? It all depends. So I tell people, go out and look for similar garages, and then we'll estimate. We can give you a ballpark range,
right,
but we're not committed to a figure. That would be a violation of appraisal standards for me, so I have to be very careful. Anyway, we're analysts. The market tells us things like lot size and how to value a particular property that way.
So I have a question that I think we get all the time.
Yeah.
So when I buy this house and it was assessed at $600 and I'm paying $820, are my taxes going to be based on $820? And I'm going to answer how I always answer, and you can tell me if I'm going to be sued for malpractice for this particularly. Basically, all of those numbers go into that big algorithmic pot that you have, and so that 820 house influences everything around town, but not itself necessarily more heavily than all the things around town, because all of those numbers go someplace, and magically, without any work at all, the assessed values come out, right? And so is that a fair statement that people should not assume that what they pay for a home is what the assessment will be?
That is correct. And we're talking about a lot of different things in some ways, not to complicate it, but if we are assessing a property for $500,000 and it's about to sell for $600,000 or $700,000, with the exception of being in a revaluation year, we are not going to instantly match that number. That's called sales chasing. The Department of Revenue scrutinizes our work to the point where they watch for that carefully. We're not interested in doing that. What we are interested in doing is saying, based on what we know about the listing, is our information matching the listing agent's information on MLS, for instance? And if it's not, then there are things that we will do to correct our data or update it. Maybe we haven't really taken a look at a property in 20 years. Really well. Maybe we went around town, knocked on doors, and no one was home.
The curtains
were moving.
Kids lie down on the floor.
Nobody was home. Yeah, except the dogs. The dogs always give themselves away. But in that case, all I'm after is saying, okay, you have X number of bedrooms and bathrooms. Wait a minute, my bathroom count is off. You have 3.5 bathrooms. I have 2.5. I take your word for it. I plug in an extra one. Okay. Those are typically smaller percent increases or decreases. Yep. Sometimes I'll look at a property that's selling for more than it's assessed for, and my analysis, my sales verification brings the value down because something is going on. Maybe the house is so dated, I have to say, hey, I know that it's selling for this, but technically this house might be in fair condition, or it's just dated and needs work, and we have to acknowledge that. I'm not as concerned about, are we going to hit the sale? We're not doing that.
Right.
We only do that during a revaluation.
When everything in town sold or not.
Right.
gets
So
sold.
eventually we might catch up with that, and over time we might get closer to that
Right.
sale price.
But that sale price also sort of informs the value of the other homes, because again, the 8,300 have to all make sense with each other.
Exactly.
And so what you're saying here is, it's not about the sale. It's about you finding out facts about a home. Either it has more valuable features and room count, square footage, whatever, than you knew about, or less. And so when you see it in MLS, basically, when you probably make the adjustment way before it even sells, based on what you know the physical plant to be, which it wasn't in the records before.
That can happen. Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
We just had one.
We
And I've had them
I'm not
before.
going to name the.
No, we've had them before on our listings.
Yeah.
I see they finished their basement after all, and there's a bathroom.
Yeah. Well.
But no, you're not chasing. I mean, I understand the chasing the sale, because basically that's discriminating. It's discriminating against people who sell their homes versus people who don't sell their homes, or
Right.
again, not like
Right.
a protected class. But I mean, it is basically, it's an unfair practice, because someone who doesn't sell their home has appreciated as a result of something else like they're selling. So it's only fair for everybody's value to be sort of justified with each other.
That's correct. And again, devils are in the details. Maybe that particular sale indicated a house in really good shape.
Mhm.
They really renovated it. Not all houses do that. So if that experiences an increase in a revaluation based on its sale price,
Mhm.
which is reflective of its condition or all these other elements, not all other properties assume to have that same set of circumstances. So it could be that there's a range of increase indicated in a particular market period, but maybe not as robustly as this example of a sale, an individual sale.
Right. Yeah.
Part of the challenge is that we base our work on sales, so you're never able to escape the almost like the scrutiny of or the detailed look at fair market comparisons. We talk about commercial industrial property, completely different beast, only because there's other approaches to value you can use.
Well,
Cost
maybe that'll be the
approach,
next thing.
income approach, that kind of thing. But when we're talking residential and we're talking single family condos, that kind of thing, it is sales that drive appraisals.
Mhm.
And
When you mean appraisals, you mean the appraisals that you do.
I do, or
For
an
assessment.
appraiser does. Anybody who comes up with an opinion of value, the most probable price,
Mhm.
given arm's length transaction circumstances, meaning knowledgeable buyer and
Mhm.
seller, no unusual motivations, or you're not selling to me without listing it, so it's open to competition, that kind of thing. We really do have to look at all of that in order to set values. So the nature of our work does have us looking more closely at sale properties. It's not the only properties we look at. And from time to time, we look at everything again and review it for accuracy and make sure that our data is correct for any property that's in a neighborhood. That doesn't happen as often as sales, but the other thing that happens is building permit activity.
Mhm.
And so we're really busy actually right now finishing that up. Every year in New Hampshire for April 1, we check the status of construction projects, whether it's a new house, maybe somebody's doing an addition or a finished basement, even a shed or a swimming pool. All these things that we need to track, we go out and gauge their status for the fiscal year, which begins April 1 by state statute, and we come up with a value for that. So if a house is 50% complete as of April 1st, we're going to value the land and what we project that house to be at half of its
Mhm.
value.
Mhm.
So that's another way that we look at property. That's typically the homeowner is engaging in some change to the property.
Mhm.
Or it could be the reverse. It could be, I'm filling in my
Swimming pool.
$60,000 swimming
Mm.
pool.
Can't imagine that. But
Well,
they do. I know they do it.
It happens.
Oh yes, we have friends in Amherst who do it without my permission, without me.
Oh, well. Now where are you going to go swimming?
The river, Merrimack, the Mighty Mac.
Uh,
This was great. I think we probably need to do another segment. There's so much information for people
is
to
a lot.
absorb, and I appreciate you being here.
I'm happy to be here anytime.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We are gonna do one more segment and talk about some stories, some experiences that you had.
Okay.
Maybe when the dogs were let out of the house.
Exactly. Oh, that's happened.
So that's it for today. Thank you for watching, listening. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.